Now I want to introduce the shape tools in InDesign and show you how you can begin using shapes in some of your layouts. Once again, InDesign's welcome screen, create new. 51p, 66p, one page, facing pages, one column. I'm all set. Hit create. So we have two sets of shape tools in InDesign. You'll see down the left-hand side of your toolbar, there's a rectangle that you can get to by hitting the letter M, and that one does not have an X through the icon. The one above it, if you hit the letter F, does have an X in it. The difference is one of these is intended to be a shape and the other a frame. They're somewhat interchangeable in the fact that if you start with one, you can use it the other way, and I'll show you what I mean by that. But it's not exactly 100% interchangeable. You should use them for what they're intended. A frame means that there's something going into it. You're going to put text in it, you're going to put an image in it, something like that. A regular shape is meant to be a design element. So we're going to start with the regular shapes. First thing I'm going to do is click on my rectangle tool, and I can see that there's a little arrow facing down and right. That means that there's more tools beneath. If I click and hold, I can see that there's a rectangle tool, an ellipse tool, or a polygon tool. So I'm going to go ahead and hit rectangle tool. And the other thing I have to check is down here, I need to make sure that there's something I'm drawing. So right now, this shape represents my fill. This represents my stroke of whatever I draw. And white with red means nothing. So right now, if I were to hit or draw anything out, I wouldn't see anything appear. If I click this little shortcut here, though, that at least gives me a default back to a black stroke. So there'll be no fill color, but there'll be a stroke, which is fine. Going to grab my rectangle tool and just draw out a rectangle. Nice and simple. Rectangle has these control points. There's 4 anchor points that make the shape, but then there's handles I can control the shape with. If I go to my arrow tool, click off of it, when I click on, and I have to click right on the edge, I can see that this will allow me to change height from the top or bottom, width from the left or right, and the corners will allow me to change either or. Now some extra options. If I want to delete it, just hit delete. If I grab it again and I draw out another one, but this time I hold the shift key on my keyboard, it will draw a perfect square. So I can guarantee a perfect symmetrical square. If I click the next one option, click the rectangle tool again and hold down, go to my ellipse tool, same idea. I can draw out an ellipse, or if I hold shift, a perfect circle. Now, if I knew exactly how big I wanted this to be, I could just click once on the artboard. And if I wanted a 1-inch square, for example, I can do a 6p0 if I wanted, because I know that that's 6 picas, which is an inch. Or I could have done, for example, 72 points, and you'll see that actually changes to a 6p0, or 1, and the inch marker will again automatically do the math. So if you're not sure what 1.5 inches is in terms of points and picas, well, that's 9p0, right? So let's do 1 inch. Hit OK, and that gives me an exact 1-inch circle, right? Let's go to the next one down. I'm going to click and hold, go to my polygon tool. A polygon is any shape made of multiple sides and angles. I'm going to just delete these guys for a moment. And again, I should say, the way I deleted them all is I grabbed my arrow tool and I just dragged a box over all of them so that they were all selected. Hit delete. So my polygon tool, by default, right now is going to draw out a 6-sided shape, or a hexagon, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If I want to change that, I can click once, just like I did with the circle, or I could do this with the rectangle. I could change the height and the width. I could also change the number of sides. So if I wanted a pentagon, or if I wanted an octagon, I can get those shapes that way. I can also change what's called a star inset. Delete those. Star inset, if I do, say, a 5-point, and I increase this percentage, I'm going to go to, say, 25%. it will now create a star because it's insetting, or the star inset is meaning it's pulling up and creating sort of a star shape. So instead of being a 5-sided shape, it's a 5-pointed star. I could do this with a 10-pointed decagon, say at 50%, and get this sort of solar flare look or this starburst look. All right, so these are some of the ways you can use these shape tools. Now, the frames work pretty similar. You can see rectangle frame, ellipse frame, polygon frame. Difference is it'll appear with an X in it. I can put a stroke to it. I can put a color to it. Anytime in old design and layout creation, when you design and put an X in something, it meant that there was an image or something, some sort of graphic or image going into that space later. So that's why we have this symbol or this look. So if I drew this out, this could hold my place for a text box later. I can grab my type tool, come in, and you see my cursor goes from being inside of a square icon to a circle icon. And if I click in there, I can now fill with type, fill with placeholder text. I now have this as a text box. I can do that with the other shapes too, though. I could grab an ellipse and say I want my type to be in that, filling out that rounded shape, right? Or again, the star shape. So if I go to my frame tool and go polygon frame, click once, I want a 5-sided shape. I can see the X through it. I'm just gonna make it a little larger. I'm gonna hold shift so that I don't distort it. All right, I'm gonna grab my type tool, click inside, type, fill with placeholder text, right? So I can get that idea. Now people have gotten some weird effects when they start to rotate. They'll see that the text wants to kind of stay with the shape at times. There's other times you'll do a rotation and you'll see it doesn't do that. We'll talk about that when it gets a little more advanced. But the basics of this right now are the same, where you can start to put your text into different shapes. If I click off of this, that won't show in printing. And in fact, if I want to see exactly how this will look when I print, on my keyboard, I can hit the key W. The W key, this is my print preview. It hides my margins, it hides my bleeds, it just shows exactly what's going to print. If I hit W again, it brings me back. All right. So that's just a little bit that you can start to do with these shape tools. Now we'll also talk about color in the next video so you can add some color to these.